Hey everyone, welcome to Indie Film Grit, a podcast about indie films and indie filmmakers. I am your host, Timothy Patrick, but you can call me Tim. In this episode, I talk with indie filmmakers Jason Krieger and Cooper Griggs. Together, they made a short film called Joshua, which recently screened at the Marina Del Rey Film Festival. And it also won an award at the Global Shorts Film Festival here in Los Angeles. Let's get into it. And here we are with Jason Krieger and Cooper Griggs. Thanks for being on the podcast, guys. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Tim.
Yeah. Now, Jason is the writer and Cooper is the director of a new film called Joshua. The story is based off part of your novel, Jason. Can you get into that?
Yeah, sure. I was, in my early 20s in college, taking creative writing courses and all of that sort of stuff. And part of the reason even I went to college per se, because I was actually a high school dropout of all fun things. And when I went back to school, it was kind of a story that I wanted to tell. I was very much into thrillers, Hitchcock, stuff like that. And I had some weird dreams at night, very sort of Freddy Krueger, if you will. And they kept on kind of haunting me, I guess, if you will. And this character just kept on kind of resonating with me. So I, growing up, and not to give too much of the film away, but I guess, we'll just, give it away a little bit. It's about, it's a thriller about, a guy who, is a serial killer, basically. So we, I did a lot of research on that. One of my professors from Queens College in New York is a guy named Harold Schechter, and he wrote a whole bunch of different books on the topic. So I got to know him a little bit, and just did a lot of research and stuff. And so when I graduated, I moved to Amsterdam for a little bit to try to write this. And got about 100 pages into it, and once the smoke fog cleared, if you will.
So you moved to Amsterdam specifically to write this story?
Yeah, correct.
That's fantastic.
Yep. Because I was going to school full time and I was working full time. I grew up in New York, and the only way I think for me to really kind of do well in school is I kind of inundated myself by working full time as well. So I had no social life basically, and when you work full time, you have no social life, and I was still living at home with my folks at the time, so I was able to kind of save a ton of money. So when I graduated, I had a bunch of really good girlfriends that were, one was Croatian, one is Croatian, she still is Croatian. One is Greek and all that stuff. And they always kept on kind of, trying to get me to go out to Europe and kind of expand my horizons a little bit. And at that time, I never really had traveled all that much, other than going to Canada, I think once when I was like 12. So I, got a 3-month, air, ticket, whatever, booked a hotel room for 3 days and just went on my way. And then I figured once I got there, I would kind of just figure it out, and then got an apartment pretty quickly, all that stuff, just very sort of like, throw myself into the fire, if you will, and see, what would happen. And then eventually I just sat and I would work on the story. Probably 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'd give myself a week to go kind of like run around Europe and do the whole experience sort of stuff. Sure. And then back to it, and so part of it, so the again, to get, not to give it away, but it might as well give it away. The part of the what the killer does in this story is he goes and he interviews prostitutes. And then eventually, of course, he kills them, which a lot of serial killers do. So part of the reason why being in Amsterdam was actually to be able to go to the red light district and go to, ladies of the night, if you will, and kind of interview. And, of course, being a 24-year-old, I also did other things, but, not ashamed to say it. It's just, it's just part of life, I guess. But, got a lot of research by talking to them about different like weirdos and all that sort of stuff, but doing it in a way that I wasn't going to freak them out or anything. Cause, obviously that wasn't my intention. And then and then go home and use some of the conversations and stuff that I did. In fact, actually most of the genesis of this was even prior to moving to Europe, to Amsterdam. I had done research in New York in a lot of ways, kind of creepy, but go pick up a girl and talk to her, was a prostitute. Couple of times I would go out, hang out with my friends at a bar, and then afterwards I would somewhat stalk someone. I wouldn't do anything, obviously, but I would kind of follow, kind of get almost like a method actor, kind of get into like a headspace of what would be, what this guy would do, how he would do things and all that stuff. And then, of course, obviously not do, the end game of it, because I'm not a killer. But, just try to get into this sort of creepy sort of place, which I don't know, I'm not that person, but to kind of get that character in my head and kind of see what he would do, what he wouldn't do, and all that sort of stuff. So, right. Eventually, anyway, long story short, as I just basically gave away a lot of the premise of the film, I had written about 100 pages of the book, and then when I kind of did a read through, I wasn't happy with most of it, but there was a couple of really cool key scenes that I liked. One being what we used for Joshua, which is basically kind of, for a screenplay, for a full-length feature version, it would be sort of like after, the first 15 minutes would be the introduction of the main character, Catherine, and we get to know her as, doing what she's doing, and then this is sort of his intro, if you will. And it was something that I had worked on an Indian film many years ago called Maya, which was released theatrically in Asia as Kama Sutra Nights, and it kind of was not a very pleasant experience as far as writing something and then seeing it on screen and it just not being what I envisioned. And it was a script doctor job to boot, so it wasn't really an original screenplay. I was fixing somebody else's project. Really good friend who I actually reconnected with recently, and thankfully we were able to put away our differences, and now we're good friends again. Asked me to read it, and then I wrote it. I read it, and then he asked me to rewrite it, and so. But anyway, again, long story short, that didn't really go well. The film came out really not to my satisfaction. They made it pretty much into a softcore porno, which is always a great thing to have on your resume. Hi, I'm Jason. I write softcore pornos. So this was actually something that I kind of wrote that I wanted to kind of do something different and do something in my own voice. Wrote it and then didn't do anything with it. So where we pick up where Cooper and I got kind of involved with Joshua was he posted something on Facebook where basically he was looking for material. He wanted to direct something. And I had initially thought maybe I would direct it, but really what it came for me, I'm more passionate about writing and being part of the crew, everything. But I don't like to be the be all end all voice leader, and I like to collaborate a lot. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to Cooper, was like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And we kind of went from there.
Yeah, Cooper, how about you take it from there? When did you first start getting involved, and what attracted you to the project?
Sure. So, as Jason said, I put out a call for scripts a couple of years ago and got a few in. I really liked Jason's story, and we had been friends for a little while, and so it was nice to see another side of him, and see all those dark parts, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
We worked on the script for the next year, and then put our production brains together, and I think we shot in summer of 2015, and so for me it was a fun exploration of something that I hadn't really thought of before. And so Jason had shared a lot of his research with me, and I'd watched some things and did some more reading and kind of got more into the mind of Joshua, and as Jason had done already. So we got on the same page and worked really well together. So for me, it was a very pleasurable experience, and working relationship with someone who was already a friend. So it was a good thing all around.
Yeah, it's always great when you can work with a friend.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a moment that I had to make sure for myself, but then also to let Cooper know. It's like when we get on the set, it's your film. Like I'm there if you got questions, you want me to help, stuff like that. But you're in charge. I wrote it, and now you go and run with it. So it was we didn't have any egos or butting of heads about anything, and it was really pleasurable in the sense that it was like total teamwork and just no bones about trying to just get a good story out and make it look the right ways, everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. From what I've seen, the little bit I've seen, it looks really good.
Thank you.
The night shots, the lighting, it's real crisp, but still kind of moody. Yeah, well done, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, our DP Stephen Moreno did an amazing job on this. Like, he really brought his A game, and we thank him immensely for it. So I can honestly say, like, he's one of the best DPs I've ever worked with.
How long was the shoot? How many days did it take to complete the shoot?
So we had 4 days of principal photography, and then we had a few short days where we would shoot various scenes and things that we didn't have time for during principal photography.
Mm-hmm.
There were some driving scenes that we did that
how'd that work out?
It was interesting, like you aim for the best, and sometimes you don't always have the best equipment or
Average.
The kind of time that you need or the lighting. And so the stuff that where we had kind of the bigger budget items didn't work out so well, and so we actually ended up Jason and I driving through downtown LA with my new iPhone out his sunroof.
Nice.
and just grabbing some things, just because the new phones can shoot 4K video.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we actually use a couple of those shots in the finished cut. So there you go. Whatever tool is available.
Yeah. In fact, actually, Stephen. One of the good things about Stephen is he owns a Red camera, and I've known Stephen for about a dozen years. He's actually a guy that I know through another friend, and he's also East Coast guy, etc. So Red camera, 4K, everything shot. And he the one day that I couldn't actually go because my wife was really ill. Cooper manned the ship, as he's in charge. He's in charge because he's the director anyway. And they did a lot of shooting, but the hood mount that they had on the car just didn't. It was too shaky. It didn't look good. So that was Cooper and I were sitting talking, and like, oh crap, we're gonna have to go pay another day and figure this out. It's like, well, wait a second, the new iPhones have 4K, and what do we need? We just need a couple of just inserts here and there. Why don't we just drive around? And that's what we did.
Yeah, That's perfect, man. That's the indie film spirit right there.
Yeah, you
Right.
got it. Any means necessary. It's really, and of course, calling all your friends and everything as well.
Especially for insert shots, if it's in a montage or something like that.
Exactly where we use it too. In like there's a montage of basically the guy, Joshua driving through downtown Los Angeles, and so you see all the different sort of stuff, and yeah, there was a couple of interesting Skid Row shots that we got.
You mentioned the red camera. Was that part of your budget, or since you knew the guy, was that kind of free?
Well, not exactly free, but he made it part of the camera package. So, it pays to know the right people for sure. Between his expertise, the cameras that he had, and his contacts as well, like we had a really good crew.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, it looks like it was shot in LA. You already said downtown, right?
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's set in anywhere USA, but the backdrop is clearly Los Angeles. In certain shots, you can see the downtown skyline, and there are certain landmarks that we left in place. The old 4th Street Bridge before they took it down.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, it's such a landmark, and so many things have been shot either on the 1st Street or 4th Street Bridge. So I really wanted to make sure that was a part of the film, as a homage to, what LA has to offer.
Now, without giving too much away, since he is, somewhat of a bad guy or a serial killer, as you said, did you all film with any blood or fake blood?
No.
So
oh yeah.
How do I answer this diplomatically without giving away too much? It's a fairly bloodless affair.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is blood, and I wouldn't call it like a horror film necessarily, except for the subject matter. But it is very suspenseful, and it does give you a really good surprise at the end, where you think things are going in one direction and they definitely go in another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always find it fun when people have to work with fake blood. Not that you use it extensively in this, but it's it's a sticky situation.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, I produced another short and edited it where we had a remarkable amount of blood, where someone was basically almost swimming in it on a kitchen floor. And yeah, it's some sticky stuff like that. It's not an easy thing to clean up.
Now, you mentioned editing. Cooper, did you edit this one as well?
I did. Yeah. I found it to be quite challenging, actually, to edit something I directed. And I always wanted a little bit more out of that director, and so I was cursing his name.
As he looked in the
mirror. We shot on the red in 6K, so we had a lot of the files were huge. So Premiere handled the job like a champ. I was able to import all of that coverage and work natively in those files. I mean, it had its own proxy system, of course, but I was able to edit right away. It wasn't like I had to do a mountain of transcoding and offline, and it just handled it beautifully.
And did you say 6K?
Right. So the Red Dragon chip, you can record in 6K, and so we did that just so that we would have options later.
Yeah, I mean, now I see it, the image. No wonder why. Well, part of the reason why it looks so good. 6K. Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. And the glass that Stephen was using was some really good stuff that he's got. I couldn't tell you names of things, but he probably could.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell me a little? It's not the biggest cast in the world, but why don't you tell me about it? Tell me about the people acting for you and whatnot.
Yeah, it took us quite a while to get our casting down. You know, there was a lot of people that showed up, and we recorded all of the casting sessions, and nothing was really clicking for us. There was one guy that was kind of out in the lead, but it just didn't feel like the right fit. And then Jason's wife, I think she was your girlfriend at the time, had mentioned somebody who was in our circle of friends, and like we didn't even know he was an actor.
Yeah.
And so we looked at him and thought this could really work, because he has like a clean cut look, but he has tattoos all over his chest and arms and back, and can look very menacing.
Mm-hmm.
So it worked out really well, and we had him come in and audition, and he just blew us away. Like we both just thought, we found our Joshua. Once we had our Joshua, then everyone else kind of fell into place, and it became a cast of our friends. We looked for other professionals in the business and placed ads and lots of sites and whatnot. But when we came down to it, like everybody that we knew are the people that we wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thought that I was going to say with Beau, Beau Borden, who plays Joshua in the film, Min had told me about him, and I look at a picture of him on Facebook, and not even friends with him at that time. I'm like, okay, well, he's got a very, in my opinion at the time, a very angular sort of Brad Pittish sort of face or whatever. He looks like an actor. He's got badass tattoos. Okay, so that's which actually I wasn't really for to begin with, but I once he did the audition, I didn't really care if he had 8 heads at that point. But like, so I reach out to him and I send him a thing and basically, hey, do you do acting, all that stuff. Now this guy he's been acting since he was a kid. I think his mom was like a casting agent.
Oh wow.
And best friends with the David Faustino from Married with Children and all that stuff. So yeah, and he's, if you IMDb him, he's been in like 50 different TV shows and films and such. So a really good professional actor, and he just stopped doing it for a couple of years, for whatever reason, personal or whatnot. So it was like, oh shit, crap, here we are. We have this really good guy, that's going to be able to pull this off, and then when he auditioned, it was just like, wow, okay, we got him. That's it.
Yeah, that's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah, it was. I just remember he had auditioned with a different gal, and it was just electric when they were working together, But then, we wound up selecting a different gal for the Catherine part, who Cooper, you knew her through Lisa or you worked with?
Yeah, so Alexis worked on a comedy web series that I had directed and edited with a friend of mine. And Alexis played a small part in that, and we just really hit it off. And I felt like she'd be a good addition to the team. And she was a little nervous because she hadn't worked on a film before. She had done a lot of stage work, so basically just tone it down a little bit, and your motions don't need to be 10 feet tall. You're in a small space, so it just worked out really well. Like I said, we were pleasantly surprised at the chemistry between the two of them,
and you're talking about casting hookers. Basically.
Yes. So, yeah, women of the night.
Did that pose any problem at all?
No.
No.
It was funny because, I mean, first, Alexis Di Donato, who's our Catherine, our lead actress. Like Cooper said, she did stage and all that stuff. This was really her first, but also very first kind of like serious thing to do too. For me, what was weird too was like she reminded me of a gal, a hooker, if you will. She looks just like this person that I talked to, that I kind of based a little bit of the interview with. So it was a little eerie, cool for me. But like in my mind, it was like, okay, I think she's going to be the one to do it, But then as far as like I guess the streetwalkers, there's a scene in the film that we kind of pan down to see, if you will, hooker alley, or for lack of better terms. And we basically, again, like, Cooper in his infinite wisdom did a Facebook thing of like, hey, we need some friends to show up, and basically, bring your own costumes, dress up a certain way. You got to dress provocatively, or you're being a hooker on the street. We also had a couple of guy friends that were playing homeless guys, like all this stuff, and it was kind of cool because it was like they were great sports because they wound up doing their shooting at like 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah, that's great. And if you're filming at 3 a.m., that's even more authentic.
Yeah.
We had an all-nighter. It was because most of the film takes place at night. We had a lot of night shoots, and it's brutal, but when you're doing, you're making your passion project. So it's not something you notice while you're doing it, but as soon as you finish, you definitely you're definitely ready for that first beer.
Yeah, 7 a.m. and 17 coffees into it.
Now, shooting around LA, did you guys go guerrilla style, or did you go about getting permits?
Yeah, I'm always a little afraid to answer this question because I don't want anybody coming after us. But we did not have the budget for any permits. So a lot of our stuff was done inside of spaces, private buildings, homes, that sort of thing, where I'm told that you don't necessarily need a permit. It's when you go out onto the street that you get into that realm.
Yeah, I think you'll be all right. You'll be all right.
Yeah. So there were some gray areas, of course, because when you see the movie, there are some street scenes, and of course the driving shots. We were very creative and very lowbrow with our footprint. We were definitely getting by on the sly.
Yeah. Well, and especially the main studio that we used for a bunch of stuff was a place that Stephen actually had hooked us up with called Zendaria Studios, which is in downtown. And so we had a couple of setups, on their actual lot, and then also inside their warehouse, if you will. But then that street was just perfect because 3:00 in the morning, nobody around. Although there were people around, actually, there was a couple of cars, and there was actually, if I'm not mistaken, like a school bus with a couple of transients that were living in the school bus, and there was some interesting stuff, but we were able to kind of get everything we needed without getting anybody upset with us.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure one of those RVs was cooking meth.
Yeah, probably.
Adds to the ambiance.
Yes.
In my 20s, post 9/11, I thought it'd be a good idea to film a scene for a short film where a drug dealer hands off a gun right in front of the airport.
Oh, God.
And I was filming it. I was standing in a medium, cars going both ways. And they just did it, 20 times in a row, handing off a Glock. And within like 20 minutes, 2 cop cars pulled up, and they said they got numerous calls. And,
oh, man.
I'm older now. I can't get away with it. But back then, all you had to say was student film. So talk to me about the festival experience with Joshua so far. Has it been making the rounds, or?
Yeah, we're still doing festivals. It's a pretty rough setup because we don't have any huge names attached to our project, both in front of and behind the camera. Not very many festivals want to have anything to do with us. However, a few have given us some inroads into getting some accolades.
So how many do you think you submitted it to?
Probably 24.
Okay.
A lot of it was, I basically did a without a box account, and
Sure.
being a writer is one thing, but I also in my day job I sell stock film footage to TV and film, so I can be a little bit of a salesperson when I have to be. So I was able to kind of like put together like a nice little press kit. Cooper was great to get me some screen grabs. We put things together. We did. I had two really good friends of mine that they don't make websites anymore, but they decided to come out of retirement to just kind of put together a website for us, which was cool. JoshuaTheFilm.com. It's pretty cool to go to a film festival and see your film in an actual theater. I mean, we did a really cool, if you will, wrap party / premiere at the El Cid in Silver Lake, which was awesome to be able to kind of do this. And I did like a little musical performance because wrote and scored the film with a friend of mine, Chris Rama.
I didn't realize that you composed or co-composed the score as well. What was the inspiration for that sound? Was it LA itself? Was it how'd you come to terms with the tone of the score?
So the guy that I did the music with, Chris Ramos, good friend of mine for many years, and we bounced around tons of material, and I'd help him out with stuff, and he'd help me out with stuff musically and whatnot. But I basically approached him. I asked him, to do this. I had a couple of ideas of what I wanted. Specifically, the end song was something that I wanted to kind of have like a very sort of Leonard Cohen-esque bluesy sort of thing. And then what was cool about that, because writing it, producing it with Cooper, we were very good with space, and again, not jumping on people's egos and stuff. But when it came to the music, I think initially when I would present stuff to Cooper, he might have been, and I don't know, Cooper, you tell me if I'm wrong with this. You were like a little hesitant to be like, I don't know if that works or not. And I'm like, no, don't worry, I'll write something else. It's no big deal,
I think when we first started talking about music, we were in different places, and we eventually came around to the same concept, and the stuff that you created with Ramos was amazing. I think it works really well for the film.
And that was what was cool, because it was like at that point I have to appease the director, which was kind of fun. And that's the thing. It's like there was specifically one song that I really like a lot. That I was certain it was going to be in the film, and Cooper just didn't like it. And it's like, all right, well, screw it. What do you, So then he showed me a couple of ideas of what he was looking. He was like, this is what I hear. And it's like, okay. And then so then I took that stuff, showed Chris, and then we just, within 20 minutes came up with something. I mean, writing music is luckily for me, a very easy thing to do. So it was real easy to compose stuff, and the different areas with stuff. It was just kind of like, okay, let's do this, let's do that, and it definitely did all come in together really nicely.
I mean, it would be nice to give a shout out to Ugo, who helped us out tremendously on the sound. He did the sound design and the editing, or sound mix. He was amazing.
Yeah, and Ugo Denard of Ugo Sounds. He's just got a new studio in Burbank, and I think he's really kind of blowing up a little bit. Again, the thing that I definitely would recommend to anybody who's listening to this that's like a new filmmaker or aspiring or whatever is pool all your resources. You're going to have to wear a ton of different hats. I mean, Cooper was the director, producer, editor, wardrobe guy, basically. I wrote it, produced it, did the music for it. And then, Ugo, who, again, another, dear friend that just, donated time, and just, gave us, just helped us out because it just, believed in us and is good friends with us,
Yeah. And anybody who's curious about Joshua can go to joshuathefilm.com.
And if anybody has any questions, there's an email prompt that comes directly to me, so I can answer any questions if anybody feels like doing so.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the podcast, guys. This was fun.
Thank you, Tim, for having us.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. This was great. Thank you for having us.
Well, that's that. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Indie Film Grit podcast. Feel free to go to our website and check out the show notes. Follow us on Twitter @Indie Film Grit and subscribe to us on iTunes. Well, I should really wrap this up, but before I go, let me ask you something. Do you have the courage, the passion, and the perseverance to make indie films? Do you have enough indie film grit?